Welcome to Be a Baller, where we're building a lifelong legacy for our families, communities, and the world. Your host, Coach Tim Brown, is excited for you to join him on this journey. On each episode, we'll be talking about how to be intentional about building a lasting legacy. We'll be exploring what it means to leave a mark that goes beyond just our lives, but has a positive impact on those around us and even generations to come. So, if you're looking for inspiration, guidance, and practical tips on how to build a lasting legacy that makes a difference, then you're in the right place. So grab your earbuds, get comfortable, and let's dive in. It's time to be a baller.
Welcome back to Be a Baller Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Tim Brown. And on the Be a Baller Podcast, we celebrate leaders who are building a lifelong legacy and inspiring the next generation to do the same. Today, we're honored to sit down with a true giant in HBCU leadership and higher education, Dr. Moses Newsome Jr. Over more than 5 decades, Dr. Newsome has shaped students, faculty, and entire institutions at some of the nation's most impactful HBCUs, Howard University, Norfolk State, Mississippi Valley State. From building academic programs and accreditation success to strengthen communities, partnerships, and student opportunities, Dr. Newsome has lived the mission of HBCUs: access, excellence, empowerment, and legacy. Dr. Newsome, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm just so excited for this. So I want to jump right into that big celebration they had for you recently down in Norfolk State. Can you talk about that and how that made you feel?
Oh, yes, that was truly an amazing event. What it was the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the founding of the PhD program in social work at Norfolk State. And it was the first PhD that the university had offered. So that made it particularly impactful. And just to go there and see the new chairman of that program, who was a student of mine back in 1987, and I could not believe it. She's gone on, done great things herself as through the in the university and the state and even in the nation. But here we were since that time in 30 years, they have graduated, I think, over 40 PhDs, new PhDs. Awesome. And it was truly amazing. Quite frankly, I had lost contact with them. I periodically over the years, the people unfortunately had died, and others had gone on in other fields, et cetera. But to go back there and see the former students who have then gone on, some of them had gone on and done great things in universities. One was a student of mine who then went on to become a faculty member for my daughter at Virginia Commonwealth. Wow. My daughter, talk about legacy, she went on to get her master's in social work, and she got it from not one, actually there were 2 faculty members there that I taught that ended up teaching her for her master's degree. So it was just truly amazing. Of course, the president was there, and the provost, and a lot of the alums and current students were there, and it was just a very delightful, impactful experience.
Awesome. You grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, and you have a unique story. How did you end up at the University of Toledo? I know you're a great athlete. Can you talk about that experience?
Sure. Well, coming up I did grow up in Charleston, West Virginia. Son of a preacher. I'm a PK, a preacher's son.
All right.
And there were 4 of us. We had 4 kids. They had 4 kids, and 3 males and 1 female. She was the oldest. I was the next, and then 2 under me. And we all grew up there, and it was interesting because everybody always thought that one of us was going to be a minister. because, my
Right.
father was the pastor of one of the big churches in Charleston, West Virginia, and had quite a reputation there. And we were, of course, involved in the church from day one. But none of us really became ministers. We started doing our ministry in our own way. Me through social work, one brother through medicine. He went off to Africa and did great things. And of course, I just mentioned about Ronald in business in his own way, and my other sister in education, elementary education, very much involved in the community. But to be more specific in relation to your question, I growing up as a preacher's kid is not easy, because you are constantly in the spotlight. You're constantly either badgered or teased, or you preach PK. And being Rev Newsome's son was had its advantages, but it also had its disadvantages, because everybody was trying to, quite frankly, get as tease it, or you the preacher's kid, whatever, So we had a few scuffles, trying to quote prove myself. And so rather than try to fight everybody all the time, I said, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna get into athletics and let my reputation show them that, I'm more than a little preacher's kid type thing. So I started off in football, played that for a while in high school, junior high school, basketball, played that all the way through high school. But the area that I really excelled in was track. And it just so happened that the track coach that we had some very good teams. We were state champs. And the track coach at Charleston High School ended up getting the position at the University of Toledo as a head track coach. So that's how I came there. Now, I must admit, I did have several other offers, other universities, West Virginia University, Kentucky, University of Michigan. But as you may or may not know, track was all still back in those days considered a minor sport. And they did not pay full scholarships. But Coach Lowe was the guy's name. He came I remember coming to my house, and they had a meeting back in the corner in the back room with my father. And I couldn't go in there. I came out. They came out and said, "You're going to the University of Toledo." I said, "Oh, but these other places, Howard, other places." So this is where you're going. And it was because they made it the most attractive offer, which paid all tuition, books, and room, board, the whole bit, And that's how I got there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your career spans 5 decades across some of the most respected institutions in the country. What early experiences or mentors shape your calling towards education and social work?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I didn't really hear you.
I was just asking, you've been involved for 5 decades of education. What early experiences or mentors shape your calling toward education and social work?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Well, believe it or not, it actually goes back to Charleston, West Virginia. There are some experiences that I witnessed as a part of what my mother and father did. I mentioned that my father was very active in the community. In fact, he worked with Martin Luther King, and they came to the house, and Leon Sullivan happened to be from West Virginia. They had an OIC, if you recall. And so I saw them doing things, and I said, what is it that they're doing? They're preaching, but I don't want to be a preacher, but they're doing things that are helping people, I saw, for example, on a personal level, I saw my mother one time, a homeless person came to the house, and I remember like it was yesterday. And nobody would do that. She opened the door, and he said he was hungry. And I remember my mother went back in the kitchen, got some sweet potatoes, some bread, and some kind of liquid. I don't know what it was exactly, and took it out to him. While she left the door open, the man standing at the door, and I went back. I was just a little kid. I said, "Wow, you're giving this to this man, you know." And I said, "This is something." Another time, I saw my father do something. We were downtown, and he was always involved in talking to people. And this man was cold, and this another man off the street came. He said it was so cold, you know. What can you do or whatever? He didn't say what can you do or something. My father said, "Are you cold?" He said, "Yeah." My father gave him his jacket. Literally gave him the jacket he had on. It was like a mid coat jacket or whatever. And I said, "Dad, you gonna let he's gonna get it back? When you gonna get your jacket back?" "He needs it more than I do." Experiences like that. I said, "You gave your clothes off of your back to this man? You don't know him." And things like that. And then in school, and then going to, when we went off to college, there was a man who I knew as a kid. I didn't really know what he did, but he was just happened to be a social worker, worked for the labor department, and was involved in jobs and employment and macro type things. And I needed a reference. And he was very instrumental and talked to me about it. A guy named Parker. And coincidentally, he ended up living in Toledo for a while. And so I was able to see him while I was there. He moved to Toledo. But those persons, people like that, and then seeing these really shakers and movers in the civil rights movement during that time. As I said, Leon Sullivan and Martin Luther King, quite frankly. And then hearing about other persons like Al Sharpton and whatever was just getting started. So it was people like that that made me begin to see that I can, and I always wanted to be about helping people, but I didn't really know how to do it. And in fact, when I was interviewed at my fraternity magazine, Duffy, as you know, is a friend of mine. But back there, when I think I was a junior in college, and the magazine, the national magazine, they came to do an interview with me primarily because of my track experience. Right. And so they said at the end, "What do you want to do? What kind of degree do you want?" Remember, I didn't even have a bachelor's at that time. I started thinking, I want to get a PhD in social psychology. And what I did, I didn't even know there was such a thing. I just said, I like sociology and I like psychology. So I'm going to put those two together and make up a degree. And that's getting a PhD in social work. But the point is, I knew there was something that I wanted in that area. And then, of course, as I got into University of Toledo, I started taking the sociology courses, and I did meet a professor who was taught the one social work course that they had. I was really majoring in sociology and psychology, and they had a social work course who happened to be a graduate of University of Michigan. And he said, "Based on what you've done, you need to get your MSW and go to the University of Michigan." So I applied there. He recommended me, and the rest is history.
It's history. It's a blessing that God puts those people in our lives at the right time. As we travel down the road, was there Was there a moment when you realized you were not only called to teach, but to lead institutions? Was there a moment when you recognized, hey, this is more than just teaching, but to be a leader?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because in fact there was. When I got my doctoral, actually I hadn't finished, but I went to my first place of employment after I was just about finished from Wisconsin. And I got offered the position at Howard as a professor there, assistant professor. And I was teaching, and all of a sudden I started getting these feelings that I want to get can be done, what they should do. And I said, sure, I have these students in my class, but I only got 20 students. How am I going to get more of them to here? I said, well, maybe I need to teach more classes. Well, I can't teach more than 2 or 3 classes or 5, 6 classes. That's still not enough people. Mm-hmm. And I started trying to figure out how can I get the word out about the importance of being a servant leader, helping those less fortunate, as it were. I was on this mission. And so I said, well, these people I'm teaching, maybe they'll go out and tell somebody. But then I said, well, suppose they don't. Then well, maybe what I need to do is to write something. So that's how I started publishing, started writing articles. And I said, well, maybe people will read this stuff and then they will go out and do something good and changing to transform society, as it were. And then I said, well, suppose they don't read this stuff. And then I was constantly getting more and more frustrated. I said, well, maybe I need to be over an organization where there are people that I can lead to do things that I want to see done, as it were. And so I said, well, maybe I need to get out of teaching and try to be ahead of some organization. So the closest one I was in was obviously the university. So I applied for the assistant dean at Howard. And then ultimately became the associate dean, then head of the doctoral program there, and was getting the word out and doing what I thought was good work. And but it still didn't feel like enough. So I said, well, maybe I need to be ahead of my own department, own program or university department, social work. And then started looking around for deanships, And actually, as fate, or I'd say, as fate would have it, I wasn't looking. I was looking in one place, but things were coming from another direction. Mm-hmm. So this ties right back into the situation at Norfolk State. I was a consultant for the Department of Health and Human Services at that time, reviewing grants and proposals on these national applications. And there was a lady working with me, a team, and she happened to have been the founding dean at Norfolk State. Okay, that's where that doctoral program was started. And she said, I'm going to be retiring, and I think you'd be a good dean. And I think you'd be the right person to take my place. And I said, ma'am, I'm associate dean at Howard. I'm not necessarily trying to do that, whatever, or necessarily there. So she said, I think you should look at it. So as fate would have it, when she did retire, I looked into it. I was asked to look into it, and was appointed dean there. Wow. And then I had this vision of trying to get more people out there. If I could train more teachers to be a teacher and a writer, and as well as an advocate, you needed the PhD. So that's why I said we need to get a PhD program here at Norfolk State. Well, that was an uphill battle because to go from a master level institution to a doctoral, you have to go through what's called the state council. You have to get recertified, the whole institution. The president's involved, the legislature's involved. And so it took about 10 years to get that program started. I went there in 84, but I stuck to it because I said, there's got to be something bigger out there. This university can do more. There are more people out here that can be having an impact. And and then as we've already talked about how that program got started and the great things there. But after I was there at Norfolk State for a while, just coincidentally, right around 1995, when that program started, I had a book which just came out, the first book on human behavior and social environment, which was used as a textbook. And I said, okay, this is good. And it was used in all the universities, schools of social work in the country. And I said, oh, wow, this is good. The word is getting out, what I want to say, But then I said, maybe I've had it done. Maybe I've done all I can do in these universities, at this university and other ones I've been in. So lo and behold, I was asked to run for the president of what's called the Council on Social Work Education, which is the accrediting body for all the universities in the country and the world, for that matter. And I said, my goodness, I was really going to take another direction. I was thinking about going into central administration, like a vice president, provost. But right at that point, when I thought I had done all I could do within one university or another university I worked, I got an opportunity to be a leading force in the national accrediting body. So what I was able to do was to say to all the universities, all the schools of social work, HBCUs and predominantly white institutions, you need to have a curriculum that is more inclusive. All the stuff that Trump is trying to wipe out now, we were able to put in. It hadn't been wiped out yet in social work, but all the inclusiveness, diversity, the international perspective needed to be incorporated in the curriculum, community development, outreach, being a servant leader, as it were. Those types of concepts and curricula needed to be incorporated, and it got incorporated. I was able to travel all around the world, Africa, Korea, and China, and make sure that they were all on the same page, those programs there. So that experience really helped me feel that I was doing something beyond just what I was going, just what the few people I was talking to, as it were.
Right. That's a great story. Yeah, that's great. You speaking about the impact at HBCUs, you led major initiative at Howard, Norfolk State, Mississippi Valley State University. The question is, what makes HBCU schools uniquely powerful in shaping leaders and communities?
Okay, I think one of the major things that HBCUs have that other universities don't have, predominantly white in particular, is a sense of compassion, okay? A sense of ownership and concern and nurturing. And you see, unless you really take a real interest in the student, I don't care whether it's bachelor's, master's, doctoral, they're going to be pulled by other factors at home, work, etc. Other factors that are going to pull on to ensure that they don't necessarily complete their obligations. And so the compassion, the nurturing, as well as the support. The cost is not necessarily as high at HBCU, so we can give more. We can fund more of the tuition and books and room, etc. Whereas at these other universities, you may get a scholarship unless you're an athlete, but it only covers part of what you need. So the support you get, the fiscal and financial and emotional and psychological support makes a difference.
Right. As you think about your career in education, it's been a stellar one. What advice would you give young faculty navigating academia for the first time?
Okay. I think it's important to uh, first be centered in what you want to do. Okay. Don't go in, have a particular goal in mind in terms of what your concentration is going to be, because you can't do, see, like in social work, for example, we have what's called micro, the meso, and the macro. Those are the direct, the indirect, and the large scale impact. You can do something at individual level, you can do something community, you do something policy, national level. Find out which one, decide which one you want to focus on. That's the first thing. Then do everything you can to identify a mentor, a faculty, a person who has been there in that department that has similar, if not the same type of interests. Okay, you need someone to mentor. You need an individual that you can model after. And I mean, there are a lot of people that will do some things for you. You're going to be exposed to a lot of colleagues, but there are going to be some that are always ahead of you or senior, may not be in that department, but they are in that university or even other universities that can provide a sense of direction and focus for you and keep reinforcing that.
Great word. That's a great word to young educators. As this is a legacy podcast.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about that word legacy, Dr. Newsome, what does that word legacy mean to you?
Legacy to me means being able to identify very clearly a lineage, a path that is being followed, one that it is desirable, admirable, whether it's individuals following other individuals doing the same thing. Okay, universities talk about having a legacy in the sense that if your mother went to this university, your daughter or son went there, your grandfather went there, people from the same family go, and they places like Harvard and MIT define legacy that way. But I think it can also be defined by not only who follows, but what they follow in. Okay. If you can create a situation where you are a role model in a particular discipline, in a particular area, and it may or may not be at a particular institution, then you are creating a legacy in the sense that the mission, the goal is continued to be pursued from one generation to the next.
That's good.
So
as I think about your legacy and your dad being a pastor, and your mom and brothers and sisters, what's some of those life lessons you learned at home that help you become the man you are today?
Well, again, like I said earlier, when I see people being not only leaders but being servant leader, you're willing to give something to help somebody as well as give them instruction. Okay, I mean, a lot of people can just tell you somebody what to do, but when I saw people like not only my parents but people like, again, King and Leon Sullivan and John Hope Franklin and other people that I was exposed to giving, doing. In fact, one of the things that I heard a long time ago, and I practice it, I always tell my people, students that I teach, that, and people that I've led in organizations, that you never want to ask anybody to do anything that you would not want that you would not yourself do. So that means you are not too up to get down where the nitty gritty, as it were. Yeah. Now, granted, you are a leader because you've heard the expression there, many workers. I mean, the harvest is large, but their workers are few. Yeah. So a leader cannot do it all, but a leader can do his or her part. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you convey that sense that you're never so high that you can't come down and go and do whatever you're asking someone else to do. But you are a leader because you delegate. As a leader, you have to delegate because it is physically impossible for the leader to do everything. That's why there are teams. That's where there are organizations, groups, communities. So being a servant leader and as well as being a role model. And then lastly, there's an expression we have in our profession that you want to start where the person is in terms of where you're trying to help them. Whatever they're dealing with, that's what you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. But you also want to stay where they are. And that's what's living. In other words, you can't, once a person is hungry, yes, you need to feed them. Once they have a problem that is, they're out of a house and you found a shelter for them, for example, you can't just stop there because you got to somehow maintain it. So they got to have a way of continuing to keep that up. So you need a job. So you need a source of improving your skills so that you can keep a job, as it were. And the point being that you have to continue to work with individuals, not just give them a shot in the arm and say goodbye. You know, you start where they are, but you got to stay with them, stick to themness. And that's what it's about.
Amen. Well, Doc, as we are around the corner coming into this podcast, I want to thank you for your over 5 decades of commitment. That's that word you use quite a bit in this, is commitment to service, to serving people. And your legacy, your tree is so long, so much fruit is on your tree. And I want to thank you for that, for being a committed servant. And I want to thank you for your outstanding leadership. And lastly, I want to thank you for your parents and the faith. Growing up in a faith household, pre-K kid, as you said, and as we can tell that God sure works. He works it out for all of us. And thank you for finding your purpose and living out your purpose. Your legacy is truly one of service. So I want to thank you for that. So Dr. Newsome, I thank you for being a guest on the show. And I just look forward to continuing to conversate with you and just continue to gather wisdom and knowledge from you. So for the audience, I thank you for joining Be a Baller podcast today. And I pray if you enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This has truly been a blessing. So Dr. Newsome, thank you for being a part of Be a Baller podcast.
Thank you, and it's been my pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with family and friends. The Be a Baller podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. This podcast was created by Coach Tim Brown and recorded and edited by the video production class of Worthington Christian High School. Be sure to come back next week as we continue to discuss on how to build a lifelong legacy. Until then, don't forget to be a baller.